So what's up, YouTubers? I'm out here in the new shop, and we've got the Jeep back apart. This sucker has been getting a lot of miles, and so much so he's wearing the tires out. But steering setup wasn't perfect, so we're back at it again. I'm gonna make a little bit of an adjustment to it. The bracket that I made wasn't quite right, so we're gonna tack it back together and see what it looks like. So here's what we have. The old one was a piece of all thread between two small eyes like this, and then this had a misalignment spacer like that, and then this all thread was actually out like this, and it went through there, and then this guy went on there, and this guy went on there, and then there was a bunch of nuts and spacers and washers and stuff on here, and this was my drag link, and that went to the side over here where the tie rod connects it to the other side. So over there, and then this guy's okay. That guy survived fine. But what happened was, after the jamming up and down of this axle on here between the Pitman arm and the side over here, over time it just completely wore it out. I mean, you can kind of see just the stress wasn't right, and I knew that going into it, that the angles weren't right. But he was so anxious to get going, I decided I would just slap it together and get it going. But I sort of regret doing that, because now I'm out here taking breaks from other things that I'm working on to work on the Hurricane again. But he has been nonstop telling me for the last week and a half since it broke that he wants to drive his Jeep again. So here's what we got. We have a piece of steel that we are going to run, instead of going directly to the same side, we're going to run it across. Come on, focus on the right spot there. We're going to run it across, and we're going to connect over there on the other side. And then we're going to use a smaller misalignment spacer so that it doesn't pinch, and this guy can get the full flex out of it that it needs to, in order to accommodate the articulation, which is what it wasn't able to accommodate for before. But overall, aside from the steering, which was working fine until it broke, it has been holding up really well. The batteries are starting to show their age a little bit, but he has been wearing the tires down. Even you can tell he's been driving that sucker. Everything else has held up pretty well. I had to make one adjustment in here. The keys rattled themselves loose, so I used some Loctite on them, and that seems to have taken care of that problem. Overall, I mean, I'm very happy with how it turned out and how well it rides. For him, he is extremely happy with it, and it barely gets a day of rest. And run time is still around the 2 to 3 hour mark. Sometimes as much as 4, depends on how much he drives it and how long he leaves the lights on. The timer system is working pretty well. If I ever have it out, I'm going to give him a little more time. I think I have it set to like 7 minutes right now between dots, and he will drive it for 7 minutes straight and have to hit the trigger to turn it back on again. And the push control, which is the switch that you have to actuate in order to put it into manual push mode, is down here, and it's kind of difficult for me and to reach, and even more so for my wife. So if my wife ever has to push it out of the way, it's kind of a pain to reach in there, so I've got to adjust that at some point. But that's a quick update. In a couple minutes here, I'm going to go and weld that steering back on, and then I'll get some shots of him running it around again and post this video up. We've gotten a little bit of feedback from the build videos but not as much as I was expecting. A lot of people were asking about how to fix a Hurricane that is factory or stock. But because of the fact that I had done that a number of times and kind of got tired of it, I didn't really feel like giving much advice there. Although I think I helped a couple people, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, so I think we have a workable solution. I have it tacked into place right now so that I can try it out a little bit. And just temporarily, at least for now, I ran this just a piece of all thread across to connect the two, the Pitman arm here to the steering setup there. And I have it just a little tack in there to hold it in place. I'm going to take that bolt out and then plug weld that thing shut. Have a tiny little misalignment spacer in there for when it kind of flexes a little bit. And then I added a misalignment, whatever it's called, in there so that those can flex on the direction that they don't want to. That seemed to be the biggest problem with the setup as it was before, and almost every iteration of the setup that I got to tonight as well, because the angle that this comes out of here, when this is moving side to side, it's going up and down, and it's going back and forth a little bit because it kind of comes in line with this and then it goes out of line with that. So it's not a perfect steering setup. It really it needs a lot more work to be right, but that's probably not going to happen for this thing ever. And if it does, it's going to require a new front axle, because the front axle is just not it's not ideal for the way that it goes. When it articulates, when it goes up and down, it pivots in the center. And because of that, all the steering components go side to side when they go up and down. So whenever it articulates, it changes geometry for the steering, but the Pitman arm stays static. If the steering just went up and down, we could accommodate for that with a pivot at the Pitman arm. But because it goes up and down and left and right, kind of like a rocking arm, we can't accommodate for that. So any way that I try it, it still has a bad bump steer. So if it goes over a bad bump, it kind of tries to jerk the steering wheel out of your hand. And it really isn't ideal. If I was able to get a ball joint and have it like they did for the factory with the lawnmower, and have a ball joint and have the steering setup coming this way, that is a direction that the axle does not move. But I wasn't able to accomplish that last time, and I think that there's a problem with putting this steering gear in the other direction in such that it hits something, or I couldn't get the angle right or something. I remember messing with that when I first put it together, and this seemed like the least bad solution. And it works. It does work. It just is. It's a little hard on the steering components, and it takes a little getting used to driving it. But it's still easier to drive than the Hurricane was to start with. So that's what we're gonna do, and I'm gonna weld that a little bit more solid tomorrow after we get a little bit of time to test it out. I just pushed it around tonight a little bit, and made sure that it works, and that should be good. As always, like, subscribe, share, whatever you do, do it right.